for it. I'm just saying I'm not finished yet. Search for it, swing for it, discover the me that lives in yes. Stand for it, stretch for it. It's my time, imagine my best. Run for it, reach for it, uncover the me that lives in yes. I know, yes I know, there'll be miracles wherever I go. It's not work, it's play. I can make magic today.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Senior Nation. I'm your host, Phyllis Ayman, and you are listening to the Source TV Radio Network, WTSN Washington, D.C. We are indeed a senior nation with 100 plus million adults over the age of 50. And we are here to bring you up-to-date information about successful aging, healthful longevity, and becoming what I call a well-ager, to dignity, respect, quality of life, and quality of care for our parents, our grandparents, and our loved ones. We at Senior Nation will be your trusted voice for informed choices, meaningful conversations, and a vibrant life at every age. Though the Source TV Radio Network is known for its dedication to bringing the highest level of jazz content to the viewing and listening audience, the owners of the network are also dedicated to bringing this important content to this fast-growing demographic, and I'm always grateful for the opportunity. And now for tonight's guest. Leanne Clark-Shirley, who holds a PhD in gerontology, is president and CEO of the American Society of Aging. Leanne is a social gerontologist who is dedicated to building a society in which all of us have a full and fair chance to achieve a good and long life. She brings 20 plus years of experience working in aging-related nonprofit, consulting, and academic environments. Prior to joining the American Society of Aging, she served as AARP's Senior Evaluation Advisor, and prior to that, she led the Aging and Disability Research Practice at IMPAQ International, a think tank and policy research firm. So I'm so glad to have with me tonight Leanne Clark-Shirley.
Hi, Phyllis. Nice to be here.
Hi, Leanne. I'm so thrilled you were able to make the time. I know your offices are in between places and you're always on the road, traveling, speaking, advancing, everything having to do with the American Society of Aging and advancing, the value that we have and respect we have for older adults. So tell the audience a little bit about what the American Society of Aging is, what it stands for, its mission, its purpose, and all that jazz.
Get all that jazz on the jazz radio station. I'd be delighted to tell you about ASA. So the American Society on Aging is 71 years old. We are the largest multidisciplinary group of professionals that are working every day on behalf of and directly with older people and families. Our members range from people providing transportation, meal services, care services, family caregiver support, to advocates in DC, to academics in the classroom, to marketing professionals, to creative design professionals. We even have some interior design folks that, see the importance and the opportunity of really just getting into the game here. We are an aging society. So everyone that agrees that we should all have a good shot at a good long life is welcome at ASA.
So interesting when you said, all these different aspects and areas and groups that you're working with. Do you work with media at all? Because I have seen in the last I think it's more than 6 months, but particularly in the past 6, maybe to 9 months, particular commercials that are not just about Aricept or Home Instead or some caregiver, home care situation, but really depicting older people, and not just about Prevagen, but integrating older people. I know there's one I continue to see about this woman. She looks like she might be in her 60s, maybe even 70s, with a young gal in a beauty salon, and they're looking at their nails, and they're fun, and these fun glasses. And I think they're starting to introduce and depict older people in more natural situations. So does ASA have any role in that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. We are definitely seeing a change, and the media, they are not fools. They understand exactly what is happening at a population level. And the wise media companies will lean all the way into that, and differentiate themselves and not run away from it or frame it just as something to fear or avoid. So I'm with you. Yeah, we do work with media. We have done some interesting partnerships with some groups in Colorado, to portray aging differently in business cards. One of our
Oh,
members, Jan Golden, she runs an entire business, portraying older people into aging in a positive light, instead of as a joke when it comes to the birthday card industry. There's all kinds of examples. We are, friends with Michael Clinton, who runs Roar Forward. He's all about celebrating in big media, expressions of aging and age that reflect the reality and not these outdated stereotypes.
right. Yeah, I have to. And when I included in what I was saying, which was about, Aricept or Prevagen, I mean, I'm not saying those commercials don't have a place, and they're for a purpose, obviously, like any other advertisement, to get people to buy stuff, to spend money. But it's interesting what you said. The media is no fools, because with 100 million people over the age of 50, that's a huge amount of buying power.
Hmm.
And if you look the other way, you're going to be missing that mark.
Yep, absolutely. No question. There's tremendous spending power, tremendous market share, and a lot to lose if you come at that in the wrong way.
Yeah, I agree 150%. So, you know, as advancing, um, or I should say, addressing the issue of ageism in our
Hmm.
society, how does ASA address that as well, or how does ASA go about addressing that?
Yeah, ageism, it's for those of you who may not know, ageism is simply discrimination based on how old you look, how old you are, how old someone thinks you are. It's very real and it's very harmful. There are economic harms, when we're prevented from getting a job because we're perceived to be too old. Ageism happens in healthcare settings. Providers treat us differently the older that we are. And, that results in underdiagnosis, misdiagnosis, no diagnosis at all,
Correct.
resistance to even go to the doctor if you feel like you're not being valued or listened to. So it's very real. I think sometimes we hear the term ageism and we think, what is that? Is that just another ism that's floating around out there? Is it real? It very much is. And the WHO actually had a statistic, 1 out of every 2 people in the world will encounter some type of discrimination because of how old they are. And by the way, it goes both ways.
I was just
Not
going
just
to, I was just going to say that, as we were talking about that obviously younger people experience that, but that's not what this is about. But that is a form of age discrimination as well. They don't know
yeah,
anything, those young people, whatever it is. And then the young
whatever it
people,
is.
those older people, they don't know about technology. They don't know about that. They can't learn that. yada, yada,
Yeah.
yada, yada. But, it's interesting what you just said. I was out to dinner with a woman I met recently, and we were out to dinner last Friday night. And I don't remember. I think I'm 72. I think she's 80 or early 80s or about 79. I don't quite remember the exact age, but somewhere in there. And she was telling me a story about how she had to bring her car in because it had some difficulties, and where she had to drive the car to get to, let's say, the maintenance part, the service department, was like a little challenging for her. And so she asked the one of the fellows to drive the car for her, or was asking him something. And what she said to me was that the person who was in charge of that service department spoke around her. These were her exact words: spoke around her, and she felt like she was almost invisible, and that she
Yes.
didn't even count. And I hear that a lot. I'm sure you hear
Me
that a lot.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is it I hear it all the time, and I hear it most from women. And we could probably have an entire conversation about reasons why that is the case, but
Right.
it's not just women. It is also men. It is people from the LGBTQ plus community. It's widespread. This feeling of invisibility. It's just like a tiny actions that people don't even know they're doing, the way they speak to us. There's a term in academic gerontology that we talk about, elder speak, how we change the way we talk to someone because we think they are old or an elder, and it can
And
come
don't
off
hear or
very
don't
generalizing.
understand, or what, not to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
no, it's real. And this feeling of invisibility that accompanies it, I hear that all the time too. But you know what I also hear? And I like to think about this as sort of two ends of the spectrum. I hear the invisibility thing all the time, but I'm also starting to hear these are the best years of my life.
Right.
And, there's room for all of that, even within one person's experience.
Right.
Um, so to answer your earlier question, ASA, the American Society on Aging, for 3 years now, we have been celebrating what we call Ageism Awareness Day. And we just did that last week.
Right.
So we've built an entire campaign and put resources and tools available on our website to anyone who wants to use them any day of the year to simply raise awareness that this is a thing and it really hurts us. And there's pretty practical things you can do to push back against it and to end it. So it's very exciting. It's gaining traction. And I think there's a sea change happening.
So what I also, well, the research is there. It's not just what I think, and I'm sure you can, validate this, that it's also because of these feelings about and towards older people, that older people, or people as they get older, start to internalize that message, and it really affects them emotionally, psychologically, um, in so many different ways, even thinking about their own capabilities. So I was
Yep.
at a meeting the last 2 days, and yesterday, the woman who had the meeting, I think she said she was 62. I think she say she was 62? 60. It was her birthday that day. And she referred to herself as old. And I was horrified. I said, first of all, I'm 72. I don't even think of myself that way. Now, she did have a good point, which was that word doesn't mean anything to me. And people should be able to express, use whatever words they want. I agree with that. I said, but here's the thing. And she said, I don't think of myself as any age. I said, but, using that word, the next person is now who has an attitude about older people will internalize for themselves, and that continues to perpetuate the stereotype about how they feel about older people.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And, you're probably familiar. Talk about startling research. Um, There have been really robust findings suggesting that if we feel bad about our own aging experience, we live 7.5 years fewer.
Oh,
Put
wow.
differently, if we feel positive about our aging experience, we live 7.5 years longer. So, to your point, I agree. People should, if I had a magic wand, I would just get rid of any sort of meaning at all to the word old. If you want to say you're old, that's great. It shouldn't be something to
Right.
fear. But when you have feelings about it that are negative, it shows up in the length of our lives. How wild is that?
Well, here's something. So even though this woman said that she didn't attach negative um, feelings or had any negativity about the word old, I can't say that's not true, but the fact that she's using the word old to describe herself, and correct me if I'm wrong, or I'm just thinking now that isn't she taking on what society thinks, to some degree, taking on what society thinks about a person who's 60?
Yeah, she could be. She could be, or she could be sort of reclaiming it for herself and saying,
Oh,
"Yeah, I'm old. Check me out. I'm
oh,
old,
okay. Well,
and
that's true. I
this is
didn't.
my version of old."
Right,
And
right.
it's fabulous. So yeah, I mean, who knows what was behind her sentiment, but there's been another campaign that has gained traction over the past couple of years about owning your age.
Right.
Um, to the point where I should have said, my name is Leanne and I'm 45 years old. And, just being really explicit about it, instead of running away from it, instead of saying, oh, it's not polite to ask.
Right. Yeah. People say it's not polite to ask a woman her age. And why is that? So
Yeah.
I'm looking at my phone because I just sent this to the woman who told me that she felt invisible. And
Mm,
it was a text that I got from someone about a woman who is 100 and talks about longevity. I don't remember who sent me this article, and she's still going to the gym. And she's, a 100-year-old woman still goes to the gym, and she shares her longevity tips. It was on Google, and somebody sent it to me.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's interesting. There's been some work done to try to understand how people define old. And you may have heard this, but it's usually people tend to define old as being 10 years older than they are today. So it's always a moving target. So for some people, they'll never get there. They'll never be old. Or perhaps, they'll identify as old if they have a significant change to their bodies or their minds or something like that. But I always find that interesting. It's
hmm.
it's it's something we'll never reach. It's always 10 years ahead of us.
I like that, right? Yeah, I like that, a moving target, because otherwise you think, okay, well, I'm only going to live to whatever. If you have that mindset, you know, um, hopefully that, well, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
I have a very dear friend. She's 10 years my senior, and she has this ailment, that ailment, this ailment, that ailment. Yet she's still a very, very vibrant, active person in her community, in her family, with her, I think her grandchildren now are teenagers. I mean, she's on her local city council. But she says that, and actually reached out to me recently to look into um, states, or if the state she lives in has, you know what I'm going to say, right? No, has
Uh-huh.
the way for her to make an active decision about um, ending her life,
Medical aid in dying. Yep.
medical aid and dying.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I thought it was interesting. Here's a person so vibrant, so, involved, And yet, because she has this ailment or that thing or this thing or that thing, she's thinking that she's already like planning that.
Yeah. Wow. But that's just it. We, we have one word, or a very small set of words: aging, old, uh, such narrow words that mean so many things to us. And we assign so many different types of meanings. So when we talk about aging, um, we could be talking about our health. We could be talking about feeling lonely. We could be talking about feeling invisible. We could feel, we could feel, we talk about so many things and use one word to describe it. And it's just so limiting. And so here we're having a conversation about someone who's vibrant, who's living her life, who's experiencing health challenges, and who's really concerned about what her end of life experience will be. And so often we put one little tiny word, aging, like it
Right.
means so much.
So,
I love the comment.
yes, Keanu says, and I love this because what she said, she's saying at the end is what I say: a left-handed compliment. You don't look your age. Well, how old am I supposed to look? I have said that to people. You don't look like you're 72. What am I supposed to look like at 72?
This is what 72 looks like
Looks
for
like,
you.
but that is because there's a preconceived notion based on, okay, and maybe we do look, maybe we are more vibrant now at 72 than years ago for there are a variety of reasons without going into that. Um, so maybe, that's just ingrained in people's heads. But, I've told this story on this show before. It was now it's a couple of summers ago. And there's a place near me, and it's a nice spot to have Sunday brunch or lunch or whatever. And I went this one time, and it was a nice day. And there was a little table. I sat outside, and there was a family sitting next to me. And the little girl says, "Oh, is red your favorite color?" And she was asking about my hair, and she said, "Well, how come your hair isn't all red?" I said, "Well, I want to show that I have, my age to some extent." And she said, "Well, how old are you?" And I said, "I'm 72." And she said, "Like, how can that be? Because you don't look wrinkly and walking with a cane and hunched over." And I said to her, "Well, not everybody that's, 72 or 82 looks that way." And I asked her how old she was, and she was 6. So she already had this
Oh,
preconceived
so
notion.
early.
Right. You know,
Yeah, it happens really early.
right. Just like everything else, we get, conditions with, whatever it is from our families, from what's around us, from, whatever it is, other
Yeah.
isms, if you want to talk about those. But I thought that was interesting. And so from my vantage point, how do you change it? And you have to start with people that are young so that they have a
Oh,
different
yeah.
point of view about a person that's older. And they may, in their own families, they may have a grandparent or, grandparents or,
Yeah.
friends that are older, and they may have very loving feelings about those people and don't think of those people that way, maybe. But outside of those relationships, society is in a whole different way. Let's see, we have
Yeah.
Paula just said, childhood
Yep.
fairy tales start us off portraying age as a hunchback, decrepit evil witch in Hansel and Gretel or the Wizard of Oz.
Yep. Yep.
Absolutely.
The
a
Little Mermaid. Yeah.
100%. Even what is it? Beauty and the Beast. When her father comes to see her, and he's this person, this older person, and kind of
Hmm.
uh, a much older person, right? Who's having kind of like a fumbling person, and that's why I am working on this film project. And my idea is to show how that is not the case, and that
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
way that hopefully children would see older people in a very different vein. you know
Yeah. I think that's such important work. You know what gets me are these 100th day of school things that
Oh
happen
God.
where, dress like a
Like,
100-year-old
oh
and
yeah, oh my God, I've talked about
yeah,
that. Oh my God.
talk about just,
I
affirming outdated stereotypes. But one of my friends, her daughter dressed up like Ruth Bader Ginsburg one year.
I love it.
Yes, just sort of, and it was her idea. She's a very precocious 8-year-old, but
Apparently so.
she's like, this is what, and she dressed like Dolly Parton the next year, even though they're not 100, but she
But
was just, she
I
wanted to make a statement.
I love that. Now, I became aware of it not that long ago, and I had read about it and I thought, what? And then my granddaughter, my oldest one is 11 and a half, and the twin set of twin girls, they're not a little over 9. And a couple of years ago, they had this 100-year-old day. And the oldest one was showing me, what she was going to do. And I was horrified.
Yeah,
I was like, what? How counterintuitive is that? Right?
yeah.
Right. Who
It's
came
so
up with that
up.
idea? Do
I
you know?
don't know. It's just really weird. I don't know, but we do have some resources available if anybody who's listening wants to put something in the hands of your grandchildren's or children's schools. Like our website has some of that
How,
stuff.
well, what is the website? Why don't you tell people what it is?
Yeah, you can find us at www.asaging.org, asaging.org. And
Perfect.
you'll find tons
When
of
we're talking
resources
about
available.
100-year-olds, Japan has the right idea. They have a holiday to celebrate centenarians. It's
I
a
didn't know that. Do they?
huh? You didn't
I
know
didn't
that?
know that.
Yeah,
No, that's
it's a
cool.
celebration. It's a beautiful thing. And why aren't we celebrating that instead of saying, okay, someone puts on a gray wig and walks with a cane and hunches
Yeah.
over. As a matter of fact, and I have brought this up before, that in England, and even not just in England, but in this country years ago, like Declaration of Independence, Constitution times, putting on a gray wig was a sign of wisdom, right? They
Yeah.
wore powder wigs, and that showed that you had wisdom, that you were bringing to the conversation. So what happened to that? How did we lose that? Does the American Society of Aging look into that? How we lost that at all?
Well, our members certainly do. There are some really fascinating papers written on this. There are theories behind it. One resource I can direct you to, there's a really intelligent scholar named Paul Nash at the University of Southern California. I should connect you. Maybe he can be on your show.
I'd love to have
But
him on my show. Absolutely. I'm writing down the
yeah.
name.
Yeah. Paul Nash, he's great. But he actually produced an entire course for ASA exploring how all of these things came to be and how it shows up today and what we can do differently. We have a certificate program in ageism and culture, it's called actually. But yeah, there's a deep academic history. The first, I'm going to get the date wrong, but the first mention of age as a problem or age as decline happened a long time ago by Cicero in BC. I mean, we're talking
Really?
53 BC. So humans have always had some connection between advanced age and death and avoiding all of it, so it really gets back to the root of fearing our mortality. That's really the essence of it, which is super interesting, but there's a
Right.
lot written out there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, that's interesting that it goes back that far.
Yeah. Which sort of signals that, it's not the easiest problem to overcome. We've been dealing with this for a very long time, but that doesn't mean we give up or stop trying to end it.
Right. It's funny you talked about how when the person said, how from the earliest times, Hansel and Gretel, and how people are depicted. I mean, I think about I'm thinking about, children. It's not just that, but who are their heroes? Who are the little figures they have? They're all young princes and princesses, and of I'll say of a certain age, right? What would
Yeah.
be interesting? Now, I didn't see the Barbie movie.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't see it, but I wonder if it would be interesting to me. I don't know if maybe this is in the works or maybe they show it in the film. I really have no idea because I didn't see it. If they took them into their older years as this great, vibrant couple, and if that would maybe. I hope I didn't just give somebody an idea.
Yeah, really. Yeah, keep that idea. There is an older woman in that movie. I've only seen it once, so I can't remember the name of the character. But there is an older character, and there's a really meaningful interaction that happens. That's really beautiful. But you're bringing. Have you? I don't know if you watch The Bachelor or The Golden Bachelor, but we're
No.
starting. There's a lot to say about
Right.
the premise of the show in the first place. You can
Correct.
debate if it's
Right.
worth it.
Exactly.
But I do think it's important that franchise has really doubled down and said, you know what, we're going to make a show featuring exclusively older people finding love. I will tell you, guilty pleasure aside,
Right.
what I loved the most about that show, and if anybody who's listening has watched it too, I'd be curious to know what you think. The way it was set up, the bachelorette was a woman, and then there was a house full of the bachelors.
Right.
And that was the best part of the show, watching these guys in their 60s and their 70s hang out, almost like, you would expect, well, like you do see
Right.
men in their 20s and 30s and doing on this show. It was the best. And all of these men were connecting with each other, talking about, some were widowed, some were retired, some were, still working. It was just such a beautiful, simple
Hmm.
example of, hey, we get older, but you know what? We're still just humans. There's nothing magic happens when we turn 65. We're just humans. We crave connection. We like being in
Right.
the company of others. And now it's on TV. So I think that's a win.
Well, so have you ever seen the series Men on the Inside?
Yes. With
Right.
Ted Danson.
With Ted
Yeah.
Danson. And so the first time I watched it, I had a lot of criticisms about it. And the second time I saw it a little differently because at first time it was just very stereotypic for me. But the second time I said, but look at what they're showing. They're showing that people still have interest and they're vibrant and they want to have fun and have sexual, interests
Yeah.
and love and loss and I thought they dealt with some of the topics with a very deft hand, very, very deft hand.
I agree.
But yeah, the second time around, I saw it differently. These people are, they're,
Just humans. Just
yeah, they were
humans.
just having fun and jealousies and love and
Yeah.
they recall their youth when they were smoking pot, whether a person thinks
Yeah.
they should have been it was that time, right? I
Yeah.
thought it was great.
I did too. And I agree fully. And what it did well that some other shows and movies have not done so well is show that holistic picture. I mean, there's a
Right.
really pragmatic aspect to growing older. And sometimes in let me say, the anti-ageism movement, we go a little overboard saying aging is the best thing ever. Why aren't we celebrating it? It's an unabashed best time of your life. Well, that's not true. That's no
Right.
more true than aging is the worst thing ever.
Right.
There's
Right.
a balance, there's a middle ground, and it's different for all of us. So pragmatism has a place, and I agree that the Man on the Inside, they hit all those notes, which I
Yeah.
thought was great too.
And I also, now that I'm talking about it, I mean, here years ago, you wouldn't have somebody like Ted Danson at whatever age he is. Well, he must be in his 60s. I would assume. I could be
I
wrong.
think he's older than that. Yeah.
Okay, doing commercials for T-Mobile, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or any of these people, you just wouldn't see that. So I think they're, like going back to what the media is doing, they're trying to show that, you know, you know, people at all ages are active members of society and media
Yep.
Ken is saying men often don't fare any better than women. The picture of Dorian Gray. Oh my gosh, yes. Have you ever seen that?
It's
Eternal
been a
youth.
while. Yeah.
Alternatively, men age gracefully, true. Unlike women who are sometimes described as spinsters or hags, true, because a man who's gray looks distinguished, right? Men are perceived to age and retain their social value as compared to women. Absolutely, Ken, 100%.
Yep. And I think agree, and there's a nuance there. I think when it really hits men is when they exit the workforce for one reason or the other. Then it really hits men after they've lost that sort of
Identity,
social role,
right,
identity, yeah, position,
right.
um, whatever you want to say. But yeah, agree.
I think for women, that happens often when the children leave the house. And even if the woman was active in the workforce, still that role as the mother and the
Hmm.
caretaker, the woman often goes through that transition at that time. I think
Sure.
that
Yeah.
that loss. It's like, what came out of your womb is now gone, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, um, yeah, no, it's also very interesting. And how can we approach this, change it, think about it? I think, as I started out, I think media is doing a great job. There's someone had
Better job. Let's say a
a
better
better
job.
job.
Let's not say great yet.
Okay. There's a I think it's on Instagram. I'm not really an Instagram person, but somebody had sent this to me, and now I look forward to receiving this. So it's this woman she's got to be in I think she's in her 70s. I really is. And she's giving advice about men. And you
Ah,
see her dressed all these different ways. She has these big glasses. Sometimes she looks very sexy. Sometimes she looks. Have you seen it? Um,
I there
and
Yeah, there I don't know if I've seen that one, but there are several on Instagram that I've been following.
it's fantastic. So Lou is saying men aging is distinguished, women aging is extinguished. Loved that, Lou. Love it. Absolutely. That's probably unfortunately, a great way to see
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like what that woman was saying. She felt invisible, like she
Yeah.
didn't count, like she didn't matter.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, she couldn't negotiate to drive around that obstacle to get to the service department. I mean,
Yeah.
so what?
And the irony there is if they could have removed that obstacle for her, we'd all be better off for it. That's
Right.
one less obstacle we all face when we're
Right, right. But they wouldn't have thought of that, right?
no. Yeah.
No, they wouldn't have
Yeah.
thought of that. I just, yeah, I mean, I just think there are so many facets of this
Yeah.
to talk about. Mel, the owner of the station, and I did a couple of shows on how film has looked at aging through the years. Um, and different films, whether they're funny, whether they're more serious in nature, when a person looks back on their life, did their life have meaning, how they look at themselves, when they get older. But one of the things that gets me is that some of it, and maybe it's just my own personal, kind of perception, or why it irks me. Maybe it's other people don't see it that way, but some of it is very slapsticky.
Mm,
And to me, that kind of doesn't hit the mark. Not that everything has to be serious, but that it doesn't really hit the mark about, that it has meaning, that it has real meaning. It's just like
yeah.
slapsticky fun stuff. And I don't think people come away with understanding the deeper meaning behind that. But I could be wrong. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I like to think about it. as the more examples, the more arrows we have in our quiver to sort of aim at the same problem, the better. And so for some people, the slapstick, I agree. I think about Grumpy Old Men, for
Right.
instance. That leaned way too far into the sort of slapstick, but that could really resonate with someone.
True.
Um, there's a film on Netflix called Nona's. Have you seen this one yet?
Oh, it
It's
sounds familiar, but
Yeah, Susan Sarandon is in it, and the guy whose name I always forget. Yeah, anyways, it's a beautiful film. I highly recommend it to you and to everybody listening. That
I'll have to.
explores, yeah, it explores all kinds of things that we've been talking about, and caregiving, and
Ah,
sexuality, and coming out of the closet, and role. It's actually based on a restaurant in New York City where a gentleman hired Italian grandmas to do the cooking.
oh,
So
wow. And that's why I think
fabulous.
it sounds familiar because I think I know that restaurant.
Yep, you probably do. So and that movie will certainly resonate. I think about, shows like Grace and Frankie, if anybody
Right.
listening has seen. I don't know if there's one right way or one wrong way. Um, but the more examples and the more holistic we can, show and talk about and portray this thing that we're all going through, the better.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's just something that I just dawned on me when you said about this restaurant and they hired these the grandmas to do the
Yeah,
cooking.
the
So
Nonas.
yeah, the known as so why, here it is. We really value that in so many ways. We value the recipes from the old country. I mean, let's face it, we are a country of immigrants, whether anybody wants to understand that or not. Most, except for the Native Americans, everybody came from someplace else. And so, those old world, the recipes from the old country, from the grandma recipes, from whatever it is, we value those, but I don't know that we attach it to valuing the people.
Yep, I agree. And maybe we attach the value to the person when they're in that role. We attach the
Right.
value to the Nona when she is being Nona like in a way that we expect when she's cooking for us or taking care of us. Value comes through. But, I guess that's just sort of a commentary on our society. We sort of value each other based on what we produce,
Right.
what we contribute to um, workplaces, but yeah, I don't disagree. It is fascinating how old objects are revered, but
Right. And don't we revere, fine wine ages, it becomes,
yeah.
fine wine ages over time, right? And, age steaks and antiques and age cars,
Yep.
all these things that we value with age, but not necessarily the person. Lynn says
Yeah.
another excellent movie about aging that has great repartee is Something Gotta Give with Nicholson and Keaton. Yes,
Oh,
Something Gotta Give. Oh my goodness, I remember that film. Fantastic,
yeah. 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 Yep. Yep. Yeah.
fantastic.
Timely too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it, how that transitions and how that happens, isn't Something Gotta Give the one where he's with the daughter first? Yeah, 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 yeah. And then how that all evolves,
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, that was a really a great one. I
Yeah.
was thinking of it at the time that Mel and I did that show. I didn't remember the name of that show, but I knew I had a show in the back of my head.
Yeah.
So I'm glad Lou just brought
Yeah.
that up. But yeah, I think you hit on a good point, which is who knows what hits the mark for certain people.
Yeah, absolutely. And we take that into consideration too in the work that we do. One of our mantras, if you will, at ASA is to design with instead of for. And so I think we can get into, there's a whole burgeoning age tech sector.
Right.
You could argue if age tech should even be a thing, or if all tech should just take into account
Right.
older age. But all that aside, the apps and the software and the solutions, if you will, that get it right are the ones that involve the end user from the get-go. The ones that
Right.
are wrong are building off of really dated stereotypes and kind of paternalistic. And, that really just, it's all about understanding, that the older we get, the more unique we become. And so
Right.
got to dive into that sort of diversity, if you will. And then B, you have to take the time, invest the time to get a little bit more granular. Nobody is doing anything for the 50 plus or the 65 plus. That's just too wide of a net.
Right, 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 right. I just thought of this as you're talking. I don't know if people know what a gerontologist is.
Probably not.
Or a social gerontologist, something. Gee, I should have asked that question up front. But obviously, everything you're talking about kind of says it. But maybe you want to talk a little bit more about what that is.
I would love to. I introduced myself as a gerontologist one time, and someone said, "Oh, I love family trees." I'm like, "Oh, well, that's a genealogist, but okay, it's adjacent. We'll call it adjacent."
It's an ologist.
It's an ologist,
and it starts with a G.
Yeah, yeah, family. But yeah, no, I would be happy to talk about that. So, gerontology at a high level is the study of aging. That's pretty big. So I am a social gerontologist, which means I love learning, talking about, researching, designing for the different social structures that we have, that affect how we age, that are built around our age. We qualify for Medicare at a certain age. Why is that so, for instance? But there are gerontologists out there that work at the cellular level, that are working with like worms to understand how to increase the length of time that a cell stays alive.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
There are gerontologists out there that focus on psychology and psychiatry and you name it. It's a broad net, but it's really the academic study of aging, the experiences of aging. I fell into it on accident. I was trying to pick a course my sophomore year of college. I was a psych major, and it just wasn't really calling to me. And I thought, I was looking at it. This was back in the days when you like flipped through a course book and then you had to call to register. It's like, ancient times. But I saw this course, Introduction to Our Aging Society. I was at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. And I thought, weird, how could you talk about aging for an entire semester? So the joke is, here I am 30 years later talking about it every day. So, just goes to show you how big of a field it is.
Right. And you have to be open, right? You didn't know, and you were curious, you delved into it, and how lucky, not only for you, but for us, because,
well, thanks.
Not only for the American Society on Aging, but, all the work that you do. And can you talk about some of the conferences that you participate in, that the society participates in? I'm a member of the United Nations NGO Committee on Aging,
yes,
which is great. But can you talk about, some of the other, organizations where you speak or who you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. We are waiting. We've submitted to we're waiting for our designation as a contributing nonprofit, not NGO member of the UN. So,
cool.
Yeah. Where I understand it takes. Well, that was a whole bureaucratic process.
Right.
I learned a lot. We'll see. So, while we're waiting our status at the UN, every year we host a conference called On Aging, and this year it will be in Atlanta at the end of April. And it's a really large gathering of professionals from different sectors that I mentioned earlier. It is a place unlike any other. You have folks like Raymond Jetson, who I understand, from Aging While Black, who was on your show. He
Yes.
comes and curates an entire track of sessions just exploring what it means to be aging while Black. We have learning centers where, academic programs will come and, teach gerontology on site. We've got tracks of programming to understand the latest innovations to help address social isolation and loneliness, to look at food security and what communities are doing to make sure that people of all ages have access to food. It is, there's no other place like it. It's the best event of the year, but I'm biased.
Right. I mean, I was sorry I missed it this year. I told you about that because I would have loved to have heard Ken Dykewald speak.
Yeah.
And maybe at some point I'll be able to get him on the show. That would be really super duper.
Yeah, he's great.
But does the American Society on Aging also address care models?
Oh yeah, we are members. Absolutely. I'm pausing because there's so much to say about that. The short answer is yes. And that happens very much at the conference. The National Alliance for Caregiving is a close friend and partner to ASA. They are there talking about what they're doing on the Hill. They're there talking about different care models, caregiving for different conditions, whether that's cancer or serious illness. One of my favorite moments at an ASA conference actually happened around the topic of care. I walked into a room. It's almost like a joke. I walked into a room and and found myself in conversation with a geriatrician, with a student of gerontology who was interested in policy, and with a family caregiver coordinator who had no formal training at all, but went through a care journey with her mom and thought, wow, this was terrible. I want to make it less terrible for people. And I'd never, it was amazing to be in conversation with a doctor, a policy student, and someone who lives this every day.
Wow.
And they were talking about nursing home discharge, which I know you know all about. But you had this really unique combination of people contributing their different perspectives. I walked up and, the family care coordinator was talking about just how awful it is to go through the discharge procedure. And the geriatrician was listening. It's like, yeah, I write these discharge orders. I've never thought about it from that perspective before. And the student was like, well, what policies are in place that make this? I mean, it's just incredible. So,
So can anybody go to this conference?
Yeah, anybody can go. Anybody can go. All are welcome. For information on it, you can simply go to onaging.org and you will arrive and you'll see the program. The theme this year is sense of belonging. Everybody's welcome.
Oh, well, that's a cool thing.
Yeah.
So when I certainly know about not only nursing home discharges, but nursing homes. So are there presentations or people there? I mean, obviously we know some of the names in the field, but that represent different models of care, whether it's, Greenhouse or Eden or Pioneer, whatever. They have their own conference. But are people from those other sectors or organizations, they represented American Society on Aging as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The beauty of the program, well, let me call it the blessing and the curse, but it's a good curse. We curate our conference based on what our members and partners say they want to talk about. And so we rely on them. So every year the program looks different. The biggest piece of feedback we get every year is there's simply too much. I couldn't go to everything that I wanted to go to. And I do understand that is frustrating. but in the scope of problems to have, I'm going to pick that one.
Yeah,
Because it just
absolutely.
kind of
So
speaks to,
do you bring in because Europe and Australia, they've been so far ahead of us in so
oh
many
yeah,
different ways. Hogway in Netherlands, right?
Netherlands.
And Australia's been ahead of us. England has been ahead of us. Do any of those people represent at the conference as well?
Yeah, we had a really good panel last year featuring speakers from the Netherlands talking about what they've been doing some tremendous work in social insurance for long-term care. They came to talk about. So yeah, it varies every year, but we have a global reach. Actually, you know who was there this past year, who was on Instagram, who I wanted to recommend to the people listening that they follow, is a woman named Jacinth Barrett. She runs Ageism is Never in Style.
Oh, I
She
love
was,
that.
yeah, she was. So follow her on Instagram. Well, I don't know. Yeah. This is an endorsement. Follow her on Instagram.
That's
She's
okay,
great.
but how do you spell her name?
Well, her account is Ageism is Never in Style.
Okay, I wrote that. Okay.
And her first name is Jacinth, Jacyynth. She's from the UK.
Okay, cool. Okay.
She's based in London. She did a bunch of things at the conference. But it all doesn't happen at the conference. We also have 3 publications. To find those, you can simply go to generations.asaging or just go to the ASAging website and you'll be able to connect. But those publications, we have folks from all over the globe writing about issues that they're working on, writing about care models, writing about the connections between climate change and aging, writing about connections between, workplace opportunities, professional development for older workers, you name it. Again, there's too much, but we like it that way.
Oh, it sounds terrific. Well, listen, Leanne, thanks so much for the work you're doing with the American Society on Aging and highlighting the many ways in which we can change our society's views, not only of older people, but of aging, this along the continuum, right?
Yep.
Because
Well,
that's really what it's about, right?
No question. We're all aging. We're all doing it in our own way. So let's make it better.
Absolutely. So thanks again so much. I really appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
So now I'd like to turn my attention to tell you about next week's show. Senior Nation will be returning to look at the film industry. This show, however, will be looking at how film has dealt with the issue of dementia and Alzheimer's disease, from moments that bring both tears and joy. So remember to tune in, comment, and ask questions on Wednesday, October 22nd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Source TV Radio Network. And until then, take care, stay well, and stay tuned.
Go for it, go for it. I'm just saying I'm not finished yet. Search for it, swing for it. Discover the me that lives in yes. Stand for it, stretch for it. It's my time, imagine my best. Run for it, reach for it. Uncover the me that lives in yes. I know, yes I know. There'll be miracles wherever I go. It's not work, it's play. I can make magic today.